Start with it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah.
Am I audible to you?
Yes, very clear.
Yeah, great.
We'll be starting in 5 more minutes.
Done. So once you are done, I can go for share screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So there are quite many participants already. I think the number exceeded on Zoom, right? It can only accommodate 100.
Uh-huh. That's why we have given.
YouTube link.
Yes. Yes, yes. Both in YouTube and this Zoom. Yes.
ఏమవుతుందంటే ఈ రెండు ఉన్నాయి కదా, ఇది నువ్వు ఇందులో చేయాల్సింది. ఇది వెబినార్, ఇది జూమ్. ఇదేమో యూట్యూబ్, ఇది అక్కర్లేదు. ఇప్పుడు ఓకేనా? ఇక్కడ చూడు, అది వాళ్ళెవరికి వినిపిస్తారు. Is it okay, ma'am? ఇప్పుడు వినిపిస్తుంది అటువంటి ఆడియో రావట్లేదు.
Idea రావట్లేదు అంటే we haven't started reading, right? నువ్వు ఇంతకు ఎట్లా చేసినావు?
మాట్లాడేది వినిపిస్తలేదట ఆడియన్స్కి.
అరే వాళ్ళందరినీ మ్యూట్లో ఉంచిపోయా. ఓకే ఓకే రైట్ 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 మనం
ఇద్దరు మాట్లాడేది వినిపిస్తుంది కదా, అది వినిపించట్లేదు. స్పీకర్ మీట్లో తీసేసాను ఇప్పుడు వస్తాను
ఒకసారి సార్ ఒకసారి ఆయన రమ్మనండి ఆయన రమ్మనండి.
Is it audible now? Audience interested?
Okay, shall we start the session? Dr. Ravi Kumar, am I audible to you? Am I audible to you? Can you hear me? No, you are not audible to me. Ravi, Ashok.
Three videos, let me stop this session. Three dots, stop video.
Can you hear me, Ravi, now?
రవికుమార్ అని ఇక్కడ ఉన్నారు కదా రవికుమార్ అన్మ్యూట్ చేయండి అన్మ్యూట్ చేస్తే ఆయన ఎలా మాట్లాడుతున్నారు మీట్లో నుంచి అన్మ్యూట్ చేయాలి కదా అప్పుడే మాట్లాడతాడు అప్పుడే ఆయన వాయిస్ వినబడుతుంది మనకి మ్యూట్లో ఉందంటారు ఆయన మ్యూట్లో పెట్టాడు సారు ఇప్పుడు వస్తారు చూడు
Yes, sir. Am I audible to you now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
మీ వీడియో మ్యూట్ చేసి ఆడియో
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second session. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce second session speaker, Dr. P. Ravi Kumar, founder director of Achievers Educational Society and a PhD holder in English language teaching from the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. He completed his MA in Linguistics, MA in TESOL, MPhil in ELT, and PhD in ELT from the IFLU. His research interests include teacher cognition, teacher professional development, teaching language skills, and material development. He presented and published research papers at the national and international conferences and journals. He has vast years of part-time and full-time teaching experience at different colleges such as Loyola Academy, National Police Academy, Nasimareddy Engineering College, Aurora Engineering College, Pendakanti Law College, and IFLU as well. Apart from teaching, he also conducts workshops related to teaching and learning of English at various levels such as CRT, IELTS, GRE, TOEFL, etc. As a master trainer, he conducts teacher training programs for English teachers on how to teach English in the postmodern meta era. Apart from teaching, he is a soft skills trainer, motivational speaker, and a counselor. Recently, he has authored a book titled Speak English Better Through Role Plays. Thank you so much for joining us to have a talk on core elements of functional English. You are welcome, sir. Now, I request Dr. Ravi Kumar to take over this webinar.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the brief, elaborated description about the resource person, that's me. And I would like to initially thank the WITS fraternity for inviting me as a resource person and share my knowledge with the wider audience. And thanks to Corona and COVID-19, we are able to access students and participants from different walks of life and from different distant places. So it's a great opportunity, and I would like to thank WITS for making it a reality. Thank you, WITS, and all the fraternity from the WITS. Also, I would like to thank all the participants for your enthusiastic participation in this particular session. So, host, could you please allow me to share the screen? Host, could you please allow me to share the screen?
Yeah, sir. Yeah. Screen share. Screen share.
So you'll have to enable my screen sharing.
ఎవరు 10 seconds సార్ ఏమైంది ఆ సార్ని కోహోస్ట్ చేయాలి సార్ సార్ ఓకే ఓకే ఈ పార్టిసిపెంట్ చూడొచ్చు సార్ అసలు అది ఒక్క నిమిషం సార్ లైన్లో ఒక్క నిమిషం సార్ కష్టం సార్ అది వస్తుంది సార్ అది
పార్టిసిపెంట్స్ ఏది
హోమ్కి వెళ్ళండి సార్ ఒకసారి.
హోమ్ ఎక్కడ
అది క్లోజ్ మినిమైజ్ మినిమైజ్.
పార్టిసిపెంట్స్ ముగ్గురే వచ్చారండి. శ్రీ రవిశంకర్ సారా?
మామూలుగా ఈ మీటింగ్ ఉన్నారు 96.
సార్ కో-హోస్ట్ చేశాను చెప్పండి. కో-హోస్ట్ చేశాను.
Dr. Ravi. Dr. Ravi Kumar, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes. We have made you a co-host. Yes, you can continue now.
Okay, thank you everyone for waiting patiently. And these initial hiccups and technical glitches are quite a common thing these days. We are too dependent on technology. I mean, we cannot do away with technology. Therefore, at times we become handicapped. So I would like to welcome all of you to this talk on core elements of functional English. As you can see it, the title is Core Elements of Functional English. And these are the objectives of my talk. First, I would like to begin with what is functional English, different language functions, the three core elements of functional English such as ESP, English for specific purposes, EAP, English for academic purposes, EGP, English for general purposes. Also, there are things like EOP, English for other purposes, also is possible. Yeah, English for business purposes, they all fall under English for specific purpose. We will go into detail in course of time. And the next point I will be highlighting is teaching language functions in a language classroom. And finally, the talk would end with recommendations. Yeah. So can you see the slide? The slide says after the exam, English exam, 2 students had a discussion. How was the paper? A student asked another student. It was easy, but question 5 confused me. What was question 5? Question 5 wanted the past tense of think. I thought and thought and thought and ended up writing thinked, thinked, thinked. So generally the past tense of think is thought, but then this student ended up writing thinked. So what do we learn from this slide? We learn that it is a kind of inquiry. It's a kind of inquiry. Inquiring is a part of functional English. Inquiring is one of the language functions. Apart from many other language functions, this is one of the language functions. Now let's look at the thing happening around us now. Coronavirus disease 2019. And what do we get out of this particular poster or slide? What do you see? A sea of words on the screen. As you can see, there are n number of words. And what is the context? What is the situation? What is the environment given to you on the screen? COVID-19. In other words, coronavirus disease 2019. We have innumerable words given on the screen, and this is another context. Therefore, functional English is nothing but speaking English in a given context, speaking English in a given situation or in the given environment. So these two slides, this about inquiring is also part of functional English, and COVID-19 is a context, is a situation, is a current issue that we have been going through, is another functional part of English. So these language functions are part of our day-to-day life. They are part of every moment, and they are there in our day-to-day situation, in our day-to-day context, in day-to-day environment. You can use language in every aspect of our living, every aspect of our being. You can take examples from every walk of life and from part of the entire day. That becomes language function in a very crude understanding of the term. Now let me give you the technical term that's used to understand functional English. As you can see on the slide, functional English is the usage of English language required to perform a specific function. For example, my specific function now is to deliver a talk. That is a specific function that I am fulfilling now. So there are innumerable language functions that we fulfill in course of time during the day. Now, language functions can be taught as a foundation subject or as a foundation language when a good command of English is required for academic study and career prospects. Two things, please remember. For academic study as well as career prospects, we do teach functional English. We do teach functional language. And English language can be taught, can be used for different specific and general purposes or general functions. There is a specific function and there is a general function. So there are different functions which fall under 2-3 categories, which I will explain to you in course of time. Yeah. So what are those different language functions we have? According to Gibbons, 1991, there are a multitude of language functions which are used for speaking, which occur in the classroom every day. So let's look at some of the sea of language functions, some of the array of language functions. So these are some of those functions which we use every day. As you can see on the screen, agreeing and disagreeing, apologizing, asking for assistance and directions, asking for direction and giving direction, asking for information and giving information, asking for permission and giving permission, classifying, commanding, comparing and contrasting, criticizing, denying and accepting, describing a person, describing a place, describing an object, and evaluating, explaining, expressing likes and expressing dislikes. At times we also express obligation and expressing opinions. And not over, there are many other functions such as identifying, inferring, inquiring, questioning, planning and predicting, refusing, reporting, sequencing, suggesting, warning, wishing someone and hoping for something, people greeting you. All these are different language functions that we use every day in our day-to-day life. Yeah. So now let's look at these language functions under core elements of functional English. How can we use these different array of language functions under 3 core elements of functional English? Yeah, I would like to give you a sample here. Yeah. Can you see the screen? I hope yes. Mother, may I ask you some questions? Mother, may I ask you some questions? Sure. Why, son? Is there something bothering you? Why do camels have humps? And the reply, well, we are desert animals and we need the humps to store water, and we are known to survive without water. Okay, then why are our legs long and our feet rounded? Son, these rounded feet are meant for walking the in the desert better than anyone does. Okay then, another question. Why our eyelash is long? Sometimes it bothers my eyesight. My son, those thick eyelashes are your protective cover. They help you to protect your eyes from the desert sand and wind. Oh, I see. So the hump is to store the water when we are in the desert. The legs are meant for walking through the long deserts, and these eyelashes protect my eyes from the desert sand. Just one more question, mother, if you don't mind. Yes, dear. Mother is a mother. What the hell are we doing in the zoo? What the hell are we doing in the zoo? Now, this particular slide, this particular story tells us that language has to be used in real life. And language cannot be confined to the four walls of the classroom. Language should be carried to wherever we go. And that is the important function of language. Language should be used in our day-to-day life, in every situation, in every context, in every environment that we come across. That is the purpose of functional English. So let us go through it further. Yeah. So these are different language functions. So we need to be in the context. We need to be in the context. We need to create context. We need to create a situation and environment to speak in English, to converse in communicative language. And most of my students keep asking me, either through a text or through a phone call, so how do I improve my communication skills in English? And I keep telling them, you do have the speaking environment around you. Do create speaking environment. Don't worry if the others are not responding to you in English. You keep speaking in English and let them respond to you in any tongue they like, in any language they like. But you never give up speaking English. That is how we improve. So environment adds a platform known as a functional language to our communicative English. So let's look at this particular slide. Here is what we can, so this particular slide tells us that these are instructions. Giving instructions is another aspect of functional English. Wash your hands, avoid crowded places, avoid touching eyes, nose, and mouth. Practice respiratory hygiene. Wear a mask if you have respiratory symptoms. So what are these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? These are 5 instructions for us to avoid COVID-19. So these are the instructions, and instructions are part of language function. So we can improve our functional English by being in touch with the reality. What is the reality today? COVID-19 is the reality, and giving instructions is a part of functional language. Yes. So we need to use English in a context. So language is context specific, remember. Language is context specific. And there can be innumerable situations, innumerable contexts, as we have seen in the slide above. In some cases, a particular form of technical English, such as aviation English, may be required for a particular occasion or a particular call or a particular profession, such as a doctor or a nurse. These days, doctors and nurses treat COVID patients, and they will have a particular language to use. For example, how do you feel today? Is everything all right? Are you able to breathe well? Have you used this medicine? Have you taken this syrup? See, these are the language functions. The doctor, the nurse is trying to inquire. Inquiring is a language function. So these language functions which are close to us can be used to improve our communicative English. Okay? Yeah. So such kind of specialized usage is known as or taught as English for different purposes. English. So all these language functions fall under three core elements of functional English. So let's look at those three core elements of functional English. And these are different core elements. English for different purposes. We are using the word purposes intentionally, and it is allowed and it is countable noun. Yeah. Let's look at these three purposes. ESP, which stands for English for specific purpose, and we will discuss in course of time in detail. EAP, English for academic purpose. If you are studying graduation, if you are studying a post-graduation in a university or college, or if you are doing your B.Ed, Bachelor of Education, or M.Ed, Master of Education, or any other academic course, or Bachelor of Engineering, that's what we use, EAP, English for academic purposes. And then we have third category, EGP, English for general purposes. English for general purpose. We shall now look at these three core elements of functional English in detail. Okay? Yeah. Now let's look at the first one, English for specific purposes. It is a conceptual term. For the first time, it was appeared in the literature in the 1960s, and Hutchinson and Waters in 1987 defined ESP as an approach or as a process rather than a product. In ELT, we use the term a process approach and a product approach, which are contrary to each other. And this functional English is a process approach and not a product approach. So we need some time to improve our language. Do not expect miracles to happen overnight. It's a process. It takes time for us to improve our language, be it listening, speaking, reading, writing, grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. It is a process. But you know, these days we see quite often on social media, people saying, English in 20 days, English in 30 hours, English in 40 hours, which is next to impossibility. Is it possible? No, it is not possible. It needs time for one to improve. These four language skills and three aspects of language, which I will explain in course of time. Okay? Yeah. So that ESP does not involve a particular type of language, particular type of teaching material, or particular type of teaching methodology, particular language, particular teaching methodology, particular teaching materials. It does not propound. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, sorry about it. Peter Stevens, 1978 and 1988, page 1 to 2, they define English for specific purposes by making a distinction between absolute characteristics of ESP and variable characteristics of ESP. They consider absolute characteristics as the following. They're designed to meet specific needs of the learners. For example, IELTS. IELTS is a specific need for the learners, a particular discipline or a particular occupation, such as nursing, such as linguistics, etc. Second feature is centered on the language appropriate for those activities in syntax, lexis, discourse, and semantics. And this ESP is in contrast with the EGP, English for general purposes. According to Peter Stevens, the variable characteristics are ESP is restricted to the language skills to be learned, and there is no particular teaching method. Okay. Now Robinson defines ESP with two criteria. Criteria 1, ESP is normally goal directed. 2, ESP courses develop from needs analysis, which aims to specify what exactly it is that students have to do through the medium of English, and from a number of characteristics which explain that ESP courses are generally constrained by a limited period of time in which their objectives have to be achieved and taught to adults in homogeneous classes. Remember, in homogeneous classes and not heterogeneous classes. For example, all of you are listening to my session to improve your knowledge of communication skills. So it is EFP, English for specific purpose. For example, let's take aviation course students, or you're attending, let's say, IELTS, GRE, TOEFL. These are the courses where we use ESP, English for specific purpose. It is a limited period of time, maybe 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, shorter period of time and more outcome. Okay, these objectives have to be achieved and taught to adults in a homogeneous class and not a heterogeneous class. Please remember. Yeah, let's look at a few examples. So examples such as MA linguistics students. So MA English students, let us say, MA English students have literature, they have linguistics, they have phonetics, they have TESOL, teaching of English as second language, journalism, cultural studies. These are specific courses in a limited period of time. And if you take the second example of ESP, during the 2 world wars, there were many nurses who were employed from the European countries, and these Europeans didn't know English well. Those nurses who came from European countries, they didn't know English. They were trained in a short-term course to talk to the injured, wounded soldiers. And these wounded soldiers, those who came from British, they knew only English, no Spanish, no Japanese, no other European languages such as French, Spanish, German, etc. So these nurses were given a crash course in a functional language. And we also have hotel managed students. The kind of language they use, how to receive customers in a hotel, in a restaurant. So this is called ESP, English for specific purpose. Hence, ESP propounds that there should be needs analysis, and it has to happen in a homogeneous classroom and not in a heterogeneous classroom. And heterogeneous classroom, we come under English for academic purpose or English for general purposes, which we will look in course of time. Now let's look at EAP, English for academic purpose. English for academic purpose, commonly known as academic English, entails training students usually in a higher education, like university, okay, to use language appropriately for the study. So it's a kind of specializing. For example, someone goes for MPhil, someone goes for PhD, someone goes for MA linguistics, someone specializes in a particular field of study. Let's say you go for diction, you go for collocations, or a set of specific expressions. It is one of the common forms of ESP. EAP is one of the common forms of ESP. There is a correlation between ESP and EAP. Please remember, EAP is a long stretch to time. ESP is a shorter period of time. ESP takes a little longer period of time. Okay? Yeah. So in EAP, what are the certain elements that we look at? EAP mainly focuses on 4 language skills, namely LSRW, listening, speaking, reading, writing. These are 4 language skills, and there is a mastery level knowledge or mastery level instruction in these 4 language skills. So by the time one finishes the higher education, a candidate is expected to have mastery level knowledge in these 4 language skills, namely LSRW. Also similarly, the candidates are expected to have knowledge in three aspects of language elements. These are called three language elements, and they are called four language skills. And the three language elements or three language aspects are vocabulary, grammar, and phonetics. Vocabulary, grammar, and phonetics. These are the three language aspects. So those who do higher education, they are expected to have a mastery level knowledge of these language skills and language elements. 4 skills and 3 elements. That is how we can improve our functional English. Okay. So it tries to tie these to specific study needs of students. For example, writing a lesson would focus on writing essays rather than, say, business letter. So EAP, on the other hand, there is some debate amongst EAP teachers as to best way to help students with academic English. On the one hand, students might be taught particular conventions, but not expected to understand why they need to adapt their writing. For example, a pragmatic approach to writing. On the other hand, students might be encouraged to challenge writing conventions and only adopt them if they seem justified, which is a critical approach. There are two approaches to writing. There are many approaches to writing, and two approaches which are highlighted here are pragmatic approach to writing and critical approach to writing. So the teachers can promote any of these two or both. Recently, attempts have been made to try and reconcile these two opposing approaches or views, namely pragmatic approach and critical approach. A critical pragmatic approach, that's what known as. So when you club these two approaches, pragmatic and critical approach, a critical pragmatic approach to EAP encourages students to develop writing conventions required by the university. Please move this window away from the shared application. Maybe it is for someone, right? While also encouraging to think about the reasons why these conventions exist. Now let's look at the third one, English for general purposes. English for general purposes refers to the context such as school. So EGP is mostly functional at a school level, at a very fundamental, at a very basic, at a very elementary level, where needs cannot be readily specified. Whereas ESP and EAP is for higher education, college and university, whereas EGP is meant for school level, where basic foundational English has been taught, right? Yeah. So it is more useful to consider EGP providing a broad foundation rather than a detailed, selective, specific goal such as ESP or EAP, which are meant for higher education students. Okay? Yeah. Apart from the rough separation at the definition level, there is an overlapping connection and proportion between EGP and ESP and EAP. In order to clarify their relation, Widdowson establishes distinctive features of both EAP and ESP and EGP on the other side. Okay. So ESP function is often on education, whereas EGP function is on training. As the learner's future needs are impossible to predict, the course content is more difficult to select here. It's used in specific vocational contexts. The selection of the appropriate content is easier. Due to the above point, it is important for the content in the syllabus to have high surrender value. Here it is important for the content in the syllabus to have a high surrender value, most relevant to the vocational content. Yeah. So let me recapitulate these three core elements. Let me recapitulate these three core elements of functional English, namely EGP, EAP, and ESP. EGP, English for general purposes, the language functions which are taught, or foundational language which is taught at school level. And EAP is the second one, which is taught at a college or a university. And there we have a writing course, a vocabulary or a phonetics, accent, phonology. So some of these are taught at English for academic purposes. Yeah, somebody is screen sharing. Please don't share your screen. Yeah, ESP, sorry. ESP, English for specific purpose, is such as IELTS, GRE, TOEFL, or when you have some course such as course for hotel management, course for aviation, or course for nurses. These come under ESP. So these are three different core elements of functional English. Now, how do we teach this functional English is the third aspect of my talk. So let's look at how we can teach language functions. Language functions can be taught at every phase of our education, at school level, at college level, at a university level, at an institute level. Functional English can be taught. Now let's look at these four things that we need to teach functional English. Namely, what approach do we need? Or what methodology, what technique can we use to teach functional English? And what kind of materials can we access or can we use to teach effectively all these functional English? And what kind of tasks, what kind of activities? Finally, what are the measurable learning outcomes of these functional English? Okay, so let me give you all these four aspects of functional English, namely teaching approach, teaching material, teaching tasks, and finally measurable learning outcomes. So the first, how do we teach ESP or EAP or EGP in a language classroom? How answers the question the methodology. How do we teach? The methodology. What kind of methodology do we use? What technique? And the best technique to teach functional English is post-method era. Let's not go for audiolingual method or CLT or grammar translation method, which are obsolete. Okay, they become irrelevant today. Better adopt a methodology which is known as post-method era. You can adopt your own method. You can come up with your own method. That becomes the method of your teaching. So let it be learning-centered method and not learner-centered method and not teacher-centered method and not material-centered method. Please use learning-centered method. Please use learning-centered method. Learning should be your aim, your target, and not teacher and not learner and not materials. Let us have, the other day I was attending a webinar by Professor Venkat Reddy from EFL University. He was making a distinction between learning-centered and learner-centered. In a learner-centered, learning is missing. In a teacher-centered classroom, learning is missing. So in a learning-centered method, teacher is present, learner is present, and materials are present. And thirdly, let us have the inductive approach to teaching functional English and not deductive approach. What do you mean by inductive approach and deductive approach? In inductive approach to teaching language, we give more examples. Sorry, we give more samples of real language. For example, towards the end of my presentation, I'll give you a few samples. Asking for direction, giving cooking instructions. You give a sample of cooking instructions to your students. Let them follow as a guide. Then they have something to follow. Okay, a standard guide so that they get the real language in their hands. Okay? Yeah. So this is the methodology. Now let's look at the materials. What kind of materials can we use? There are innumerable materials available, accessible, online and offline. But please do not depend too much on Google. Google at times can deceive us. Today, anybody can upload anything on Google. So that doesn't become an authentic resource of learning for us, or authentic resource for teaching either. Therefore, please try to create your own material rather than depending on someone's material. That's what we fail. That's where we fail. As teachers, we keep failing because we depend on some ready-made material which is available online, or material which is available in our library, a physical or online library, or a teacher has written a book and I depend on that book. No, they are a help for us to enhance our own teaching material. Therefore, let's use a customized material, tailored material, handmade material. Let us become the creators of our own material. Let's become material designers. Why not? Every teacher and every student should become a material designer, should contribute to our curriculum. Okay? Yeah. So based on the language needs of the learners, we should, based on the language needs of the learners, based on the heterogeneous nature of the classroom, we need to bring teaching learning material to the language classroom. Only then there will be effective and efficient learning outcomes. Otherwise, quite often we have very disappointing results at the end of teaching learning sessions, right? So materials is the second aspect. Teaching methodology is the first aspect. Let's look at the third aspect. What kind of tasks, what kind of exercises, what kind of activities? Please, let's make our language classroom a classroom where learners dance, a classroom where learners sing, a classroom where there is a lot of life, rather than very passive, no life, dead classroom. My God, we can't imagine, we can't expect learning to happen in such a kind of passive classroom. And recently, I have come across a beautiful video. I couldn't procure it, otherwise I wanted to share it with you. A beautiful video of a North Indian English teacher. I don't know if he is an English teacher. He uses bilingual method to teach Hindi and English. He blends both the languages to teach English language. And he asks students to act. For example, a student will be acting as eating. So another student will come and say, he is eating, she is drinking, she is dancing, he is sleeping, he is reading a book, he is mimicking. Okay, he is teaching, he is learning. So the teacher, particular teacher, you can visit Facebook. It is there on Facebook. It is making a lot of rounds in social media. I couldn't procure it, but beautiful video. I really loved it. So that particular teacher makes the language classroom very active. So that is what we need to do in our language classroom. It should be activity based. Okay. So we can also go for individual work in the classroom, pair work. We can give a lot of pair works to students. Why should be a monologue in the classroom, just like what I'm doing now? Actually, I'm giving a monologue. I've been speaking for almost 40-45 minutes. It's a monologue, but it's a talk to enrich people on functional English. But the same cannot be repeated in the language classroom. A language classroom should be a dialogue, should be a conversation where students are involved using real life language. So divide students into pairs, divide students into small groups. At times you can have whole class, at times individual tasks. So these are different tasks. This is the third aspect that we can use to teach functional English, to teach ESP, EAP, and EGP. So the fourth aspect, What is the learning outcome when we use good teaching methodology, which is learning centered, which is inductive approach to teaching, where we have tasks such as pair work, group work, individual work, whole class work. And now when we do these, there will be measurable learning outcomes. So at the end of every session, let us question ourselves, what is the learning outcome today? Okay, asking for direction and giving direction is the lesson. So how many phrases have I learned? Could you please tell me how to go there? Turn left, turn right, go straight. Okay, these are giving directions. So have the students learned these phrases, set phrases at the end of your class? That is called measurable learning outcomes. So these four actions: methodology, and then materials, and then activities and tasks, and measurable outcomes. Let me give you one sample, then you may understand it correctly, properly. So let's include, so the recommendations from this talk, before I give you more samples, let's include, let the curriculum designers, textbook writers include language functions in school curriculum. More language functions are missing from the school curriculum. Therefore, let's include more, provide more samples of language functions in every lesson. Let there be samples of real language rather than more grammar, less functions. So let's try to balance between English as a subject and English as a language. And most of our textbooks are filled with English as a subject rather than English as a language. There is a clear-cut distinction between these two, English as a subject and English as a language. Let there be a good balance. Let there be a good balance between English as a subject and English as a language. Unfortunately, in most of our educational settings, we use English as a subject. That's where we fail. Therefore, let's please try to use English as a language in our curriculum. Then there will be better learning, teaching outcomes. So this is one example I can give you, how to make a scrambled egg. These are instructions. So how do you give instructions? Giving instructions is one of the language functions. It serves, so how to make a scrambled egg? It is served for 4 people. The ingredients required are 8 eggs, half a cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of butter, salt and pepper. Now cooking directions. Now look at the words in blue. Look at the words in red. Look at the words in dark blue. First, break the egg in a bowl. Whisk them for about a minute. Then heat a pan on the stove. Next, add 2 tablespoons of butter to the pan. Pour the broken egg into the hot pan. After that, add half a cup of milk to the eggs. Mix the eggs and milk for about 4 to 5 minutes until the eggs are cooked. Then add salt and pepper. Leave it for some time. Then add chili sauce, fresh herbs, and grated cheese on the eggs if you prefer. Finally, the scrambled egg is ready to be served. These are instructions on how to cook. Now, if you notice, if you give our students this sample, now they know how to give instructions. Now, 3 things we can teach students from this sample. Number 1, how to use the sequencing words. How to use the sequencing words. Namely, first, then, next, after that, then, finally. So there are sequencing words for the beginning. There are sequencing words for the continuation. There are sequencing words for the conclusion. Sequencing words for the beginning. Sequencing words for the continuation. Sequencing words for the conclusion. Now, secondly, we should use, when you give instructions, imperative verbs. When you teach imperative verbs, imperative sentences rather, for imperative sentences, the sentence begins with a verb and it doesn't have a subject. So break, whisk, heat, add, pour, mix, stir, leave. These are imperative verbs we use in imperative sentences. So when you give them a sample, the students have a sample language with them. Based on this sample, they can come up with instructions. They can improve their functional language. Yeah, this is another sample I would like to take. Making apologies and accepting apologies. I do apologize for, please accept my apologies. Please forgive me for pardon me for this. I'm terribly sorry. Excuse me. Please forgive me. Now, how do we accept apology? It doesn't matter. Oh, that's all right. No harm done. Don't worry about it. And see the change in the tone and the kind of expressions that we use. Change of tone also adds beauty to our communication skills, adds beauty to our expression in the target language. Look at different types of tone. Please forgive me. Oh, don't worry. See the tone? See the change of tone? So students should be taught that variation in the tone, then our expression will be more effective. Yeah. So here is another example of expressing opinions. Expressing opinions is another language function. Personal point of view, general point of view. How do we express our opinion? There are different types of opinions. Personal opinion and public opinion. Personal opinion, my own opinion. And quite often people say, according to me. According to me is wrong. In my opinion, as far as I am concerned, I hold the view, according to a scientist, according to Widdowson, according to Jaxie Richards. That is where we use according to. So expressing opinions, there is a personal opinion, there is a public opinion, there is agreeing with opinion, there is a disagreeing with opinion, and there is something called turn-taking phrases. So this is another sample. Agreeing with opinion. These are different, as you can see on the screen, these are different expressions, set expressions for agreeing with opinion. See, we have innumerable set expressions. And this is where we actually fail. Students do not know how to agree, how to disagree most of the time. When we have a debate, people do not know what kind of polite expressions to use. I'm really sorry to disagree with you. I agree to disagree with you. I'm afraid I have to disagree with you. See the beauty of the language when you use such kind of polite expressions. Even the guy who is angry with you in a debate will be pacified. Yes. Therefore, let's try to use this kind of language functions. Right? Yeah. Now, these are different set expressions on disagreeing with opinions. Again, we have a handful of expressions for disagreeing. You can read a few of them. Do you really think so? I totally disagree with you. I don't agree with what you say. Yeah. Fine. So those were some of the samples of real language which are part of functional English. And let's look at this last part. I heard you failed in English. I heard you failed in English. Who told you? It is impossible. I saw the results yesterday. I passed away. So if you do not have the correct sample of a standard English, this is where we end up. When we don't have standard set examples. Okay. I hope all of you have enjoyed this session. Thank you for your participation. Thank you, WITS management, faculty fraternity, and the Department of English, the HOD and other English faculty for giving me this opportunity to share my knowledge, my views on the core elements of functional English. Hope the session was fruitful and beneficial. Thank you. Keep learning. Remember functional English. Have a good day. It's over to Wits.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi Kumar sir, for such an elaborative and lucrative lecture on functional English. I also thank the dear participants. I think they enjoyed this lecture, and I request K. Chandrasekhar sir to say a word of thanks.
Video.
Good afternoon, all. It gives me great pleasure to propose vote of thanks. My name is K. Chandrasekhar, Assistant Professor of English at Vigyan Institute of Technology and Science. First, I am glad to share with you that we got nearly 800 plus participants. And at this juncture, I thank our chairman, Dr. Lau Rattaya Garu, CEO B. Shravan Garu, Principal Dr. G. Durgasukumar Garu, Dean Faculty Affairs and HOD Mechanical Engineering Department, Professor N. Neela Prasad Garu, HOD and of Basic Sciences and Humanities, Dr. N. Fanikumar Garu, and my colleagues for their support and cooperation to make the webinar a grand success. On behalf of our management and the department, I express my gratefulness to the resource persons, Dr. Komali Prakash Garu, Head Department of Phonetics, EFL University, Hyderabad, and Dr. P. Ravikumar Garu, Assistant Professor of English, for their kind and timely acceptance. I thank for their valuable speech and notable inputs on pronunciation and functional English. I thank all our teaching fraternity and participants of this webinar for their quick responses and making this webinar a grand success. Hope you all enjoyed and gained knowledge. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you. Thank you one and all once again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, yes.
It was wonderful to be with you all. Great opportunity.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure sharing with you.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.